So let's talk about highlights and shadows in your images. And I'm also going to be throwing black point into this particular presentation because I think it's an important aspect of being able to get your shadows and your highlights just right. So to work with shadows and highlights, you select the image you want to work with and head over to your develop module. We are in Lightroom Classic for this demonstration, but all of these same sliders exist within Lightroom CC, or just Lightroom as Adobe calls it. And these are also available in Lightroom Mobile. They're going to be under the little slider area. It's this icon right here in your menu off to the right hand side. So just know that everything I'm going to talk about is going to apply to that software as well. All right, so here we have an image that was taken at our Trappers Lake Lodge workshop with Cowgirls with Cameras. And it's actually a pretty nice image straight out of camera. This is with zero edits to it. But what I want to show you is how the shadows and highlights and black point work together to bring out some definition in this image that isn't currently there. So, or that isn't currently visible. It's there, it's just not visible. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to lighten my shadows all of the way to the right. And I'm going to put my highlights all of the way to the left. So what this does is it gives us the most range between those 2 points. In other words, it lightens the shadows and it basically recovers whatever is in the highlights. So it's going to lift the detail in the shadows and it's going to recover the detail in the highlights. Now, from this point, my image is looking a little washed out. So I'm going to show you the 2 images side by side. So here's what they look like side by side at this point. But what I want to do is I actually want to set my black point now because now I've kind of messed up my blacks. So I'm going to pull my black point until where I feel it's kind of pleasing, which is right about here. Now I'm going to show this to you again with before and after. And now do you see how much more dynamic the photo in the after is than the photo that was straight out of camera? So this is the way your shadow and highlight sliders can really work together. Now, I know you're out there getting super excited about this right now because you're like, oh, I'm going to go do this to all my photos. Well, there are some cases where this doesn't exactly work, and I'm going to show those to you here in a moment. But just know that when you lift the shadows and you recover in the highlights, you do tend to come out the other end with a photo that is very nice and dynamic. And I particularly like what I was able to recover up here in these clouds. I just really like this second image a lot better. And then I can go in now and I can add some of my presence effects to be able to really perfect this image and let it show through in the style that I like to shoot. All right, so let's talk about some scenarios where this might not work. So this is the lovely Jamie Stoltzfus of Art of the Cowgirl and the Cowgirl Meat Company. And this is just a portrait straight out of camera. So I'm going to do this same thing again. I'm going to lighten the shadows and I'm going to recover in the highlights. And then I'm going to set my black point. And then I'm going to show you a before and an after. Do you see how much more we can see in Jamie's face? How much of the shadow that kind of lifted there? I can start to see a little bit more definition in the horse's coat. I might add just a touch more of the black point. And I just feel like this image has so much more dynamic capability. This one feels a little flat now that I can see the 2 of them together. I will warn you with close-up portraits, this particular method doesn't always work really perfectly. So just do keep that in mind. It's not for 100% of the time. And there's 2 times that it's not going to work at all. One of those is in black backgrounds. So this image is a black background image from an Art of the Cowgirl workshop that Phyllis Burchett and I did a couple of years ago. This is a beautiful little blue roan horse that is at, I believe, the Hegerman Ranch in Montana. And I love this image and it's shot with the black background. Now, if I were to do those same things here, that's just not good. I don't like anything about it. I have way more detail here in the back. I kind of like the detail in the highlights, but I definitely don't want them in the shadows. I'm actually going to pull this back because I really like the way this looks when it's just straight out of camera. And I'm actually just going to use my black point to be able to reduce the distraction in the background. Now I can go all of the way down here and I'm going to lose my horse's ears. So this is where I start to need to be able to do this particular process selectively. So I'm going to run over here to my masking tool and I'm going to ask the masking tool to select the subject. And it actually did a fair job. I've got some cleaning up that I would need to do if I were going to do this for real. But here is where I want to select the inverse because I actually want what's behind that. Whoops, I don't want to name the mask. Here we are. Right click. That's the right click. I'm too used to doing this on mobile. And in mobile, there's this nice little caret on the end of it that you can do. So I'm going to invert this and just pull this last part. And I see a little bit on this horse's ear right here that's going to look really bad. So I'm going to actually want to select that mask and subtract from it. And we're just going to use a brush. And I'm going to take that mask off of this horse's ear. So we're just going to quickly paint over this. And I'm not going to do too crazy of a job here because this is a demonstration on YouTube and we're not going to worry about getting things absolutely perfect. So again, I can go back here. I could definitely come back over all of these areas that are currently red that don't need to be red, or turn the areas red that do need to be red. All in all, usually the subject picker and the sky picker do relatively well. This image throws it off because it's a black background image. It's a different type of a setting. It's not kind of normal. So that's just kind of what happens to it. Okay, so now that I kind of have that the way I want it, I'm going to come over here to my black point and I'm going to pull it over and set it like so. And you can see where I took the mask off of the horse's ear, and then the background now is really pretty in black. And actually, I don't even mind where it showed up on the horse's body. So if we want to look at this in a before and after, let me go back to develop. So I'm going to go back to my sliders. Lightroom threw us a loop the last time they did the last few updates in being able to get in and out of masking. And my muscle memory is still not caught up. But let's do a before and after. So here's the before and here is the after with that. And that's not using the shadows and highlights, but using the black point and then selectively being able to edit the background. Another place that shadows and highlights can be super helpful, but not in the way I've gone over so far, is in silhouettes. And in silhouettes, what we want to have is in typical, you may want to have some detail, but most of the time you want to flatten what is in the foreground of the picture against the sky to be really black. And then we also may want to bring out some things in our sky using the shadows and highlights. So in this case, I'm actually going to bring those highlights down just a little to add some drama in my sky. And I'm going to bring my black point all the way over. Actually, I don't like the highlights where they were. I like the highlights where they were, but I'm going to bring my black point over. And now you can see that I have taken all of the detail out of this foreground here. And actually here, I might want to raise my shadows. Now you're going to notice something interesting. As I raise my shadows up, it's not affecting the foreground as much as you might think it would. If I get all the way over here, I can start to see some recovery, but I can sort of open up what is in that background without really affecting the foreground because I'm looking at the shadows. So I'm kind of lifting some of these things behind. So let's take a look at the before and after of these two images. So here is before and here is after. And it's a personal preference. I would want to go back in this image and maybe do a little bit of maybe manipulation in the sky part of the image using the masking, just like I showed you on the black background. But you can see that like yanking the hard yank of those shadows and highlights isn't going to work in a silhouette. Shadows and highlights are such a wonderful way to really help your images look better and really be able to get the dynamic range in your image that RAW allows you to shoot with.